Laura Bennett was known as a devoted mother and a kind neighbor. She lived in a quiet suburban neighborhood where nothing ever seemed out of the ordinary. That's why what happened on a calm Sunday morning shocked everyone. Laura had gone to the local supermarket alone, something she rarely did without her children. The store's security cameras captured her calmly walking through the aisles, picking up a few groceries. But moments later, her behavior changed. She stopped near the frozen food section, dropped the basket, and began shaking uncontrollably. Witnesses said she started crying, clutching her head as if in unbearable pain, and then collapsed to the floor, mumbling words no one could understand. Paramedics were called immediately. As they loaded her onto a stretcher, Laura screamed something about keeping them safe before going silent. She was rushed to the nearest hospital, where doctors diagnosed her with an extreme nervous breakdown. The cause was unclear, but they noted she appeared terrified, as if running from something no one else could see. When the police arrived to notify her family, they expected to find a worried husband and children waiting at home. But what they discovered only deepened the mystery. Daniel Bennett, her husband, answered the door looking surprised and confused. When asked about the children, he hesitated before claiming they were staying with his sister for the weekend. The officers made a quick call to confirm, but the response they received changed the tone of the investigation entirely. Daniel's sister hadn't seen the children in weeks. What began as a simple medical emergency now looked like something much darker. Where were Emily and Jacob? Why hadn't anyone seen them? And what secret had driven Laura to the breaking point in the middle of an ordinary day? Detectives wasted no time returning to the Bennett home after learning the children were not with Daniel's sister. The house was eerily quiet, almost unnaturally so, like a show home on display. There were no signs of chaos, no toys scattered on the floor, no laundry left out, nothing that suggested two small children had recently lived there. Everything was too neat, too orderly, and that in itself raised red flags. The children's bedroom was the strangest part. The beds were perfectly made, the sheets crisp and smooth as if no one had slept in them for days. Yet, both children's favorite stuffed animals, a rabbit Emily carried everywhere and a small bear Jacob never slept without, were gone. Daniel appeared calm but uneasy, insisting he had been at work all weekend and thought Laura had arranged for the children to stay elsewhere. His story seemed rehearsed. When detectives pressed him for details, his answers became vague. He couldn't recall what they had eaten last, or what the children were wearing when he supposedly last saw them. As the investigation continued, police canvassed the neighborhood. Several neighbors reported seeing Laura behaving strangely over the past few weeks. She had stopped speaking to people, started closing all the curtains during the day, and was seen dragging large trash bags out to the curb late at night, something she had never done before. One neighbor recalled seeing her pacing in the backyard at midnight, whispering to herself. The detectives pulled security footage from nearby cameras and found something unsettling. On 3 separate nights, Laura had left the house alone, carrying heavy-looking bags to a dumpster at the far end of the street. The trips were always in the early hours of the morning. The question grew heavier with every discovery. What was in those bags, and where were Emily and Jacob? During a second, more thorough search of the Bennett home, detectives focused on Laura's personal belongings, hoping for any clue to explain her erratic behavior. Inside her bedroom, tucked away in a locked drawer of the nightstand, they found something chilling, a small leather-bound journal. It was worn, with frayed edges, and filled with tightly written entries that revealed a disturbing glimpse into Laura's mind during the weeks leading up to her breakdown. The early entries seemed harmless at first, daily notes about the children, family dinners, and ordinary life. But gradually, the tone shifted. Words became darker, more frantic. She wrote about hearing whispers at night, voices that warned her of danger. One entry read, "They want to take them from me. I can't let that happen." In another, her handwriting was jagged and uneven. They're watching. Even in the walls. The most disturbing note was dated just 2 days before her collapse. The water will silence the whispers. The lake knows what to do. It will keep them safe forever. The detectives exchanged uneasy glances as they read the words. This was no longer a case of simple stress. Something far more sinister was at play. Alongside the journal, they found a crumpled map with Clearwater Lake circled in red ink. It was only a few miles from the Bennett home, a quiet, scenic spot where families often went fishing or picnicking. Suddenly, the late-night trips Laura had made began to make sense. Investigators immediately dispatched a search team to the lake. As officers cordoned off the area, divers prepared to go beneath the calm surface. Nobody spoke, but everyone felt the same dread. If Laura's words were literal, The lake could be hiding a terrible secret, a secret that might explain why a devoted mother had fallen apart in such a shocking way. Clearwater Lake glistened under the morning sun, its calm surface betraying nothing of what lay beneath. The search team worked quickly, securing boats and setting up equipment while detectives watched from the shore with growing unease. Divers slipped into the cold water, descending into the murky depths as everyone held their breath. For long, tense minutes, there was nothing but the sound of rippling water and radios crackling with static. Then came the call no one wanted to hear. A diver surfaced, his voice tight as he reported a discovery. Moments later, two small, lifeless bodies were brought to the surface, each wrapped in a blanket and weighed down with rocks. It was Emily and Jacob. The scene was unbearable. Officers turned away, some wiping their eyes, while others worked in silence, their faces pale. The bodies were carefully placed into black bags and carried to the waiting coroner's van. Forensic teams began combing the shoreline, searching for anything Laura might have left behind. A set of faint footprints was found leading into the shallow edge of the lake, along with tire tracks suggesting Laura had driven there more than once. Nearby, officers recovered a pair of small shoes, Emily's pink sneakers, lying half-buried in the mud. The autopsy later confirmed what everyone feared: both children had drowned. There were no signs of struggle, no defensive wounds, nothing to suggest anyone else had been present at the time. To investigators, it looked like Laura had taken them there herself, then tried to cover up what she had done. News of the discovery spread quickly, sparking outrage and confusion in the community. Why would a loving mother end her children's lives in such a horrific way? Was she a cold-blooded killer, or was there something more to this nightmare than anyone understood? As detectives worked to piece together the final hours before Laura's breakdown, the evidence in her journal and the chilling scene at the lake painted a grim picture. Everyone assumed Laura had acted alone in a fit of madness, but something about the case still felt wrong. Her fear in those entries seemed too specific, too focused on an outside threat. The whispers she wrote about and the mention of someone taking them didn't sound like the ramblings of a woman planning murder, they sounded like someone being manipulated. Investigators dug deeper into Laura's phone records and online activity. That's when they uncovered a string of anonymous text messages dating back several weeks. The messages were menacing, filled with warnings: "They're coming for your kids. End it before they suffer. If you love them, do it before it's too late." The sender used an untraceable number, and the wording played perfectly into Laura's growing paranoia. Someone had been feeding her fear, pushing her toward an unthinkable act. The search for the sender led detectives to a shocking discovery: Daniel, Laura's husband, was behind it all. He had been using encrypted apps and burner phones to send the messages, carefully manipulating her fragile state of mind. Financial records revealed his motive: a large life insurance policy on the children and Laura, taken out just months earlier. Daniel had orchestrated everything, convincing Laura she needed to protect the kids from a threat that never existed. When confronted, Daniel confessed. He admitted exploiting Laura's mental vulnerability to get what he wanted: money and freedom from a marriage he no longer wanted. Laura, broken and confused, was declared mentally unfit for trial and committed to a psychiatric facility. Daniel received a life sentence. The truth shocked everyone. This wasn't just a mother's breakdown, it was the result of cold, calculated evil hiding inside her own home.